touch of God! The 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 touch of God!
Have you ever seen the true face of God, Exile? The touch of God!
Hey guys, I was supposed to make a video about the Righteous Fire and Massive AoE Righteous Fire build, but in the end it just turned out to be pretty bad. So instead I started a new build with the Doryani's Fist and Doryani's Touch skill, also known as Touch of God, which was buffed in the Betrayal League. It now basically has more damage, but it is even slower than before. And I was very hesitant to make a build with Doryani's Touch, because when you are attacking less than once per second and using the skill for the clear speed, it can feel extremely unpleasant because you keep getting stunned or frozen or interrupted, or just don't hit fast enough and you end up dying. But still I decided to give it a try and to play with Ignite. So maybe let's start with the item, Doryani's Fist. It gives a lot of flat lightning damage to spells and attack while you are unarmed, gives some shock chance, and gives Doryani's Touch skill. All the support gems inside the gloves will affect the Doryani's Touch skill. So Doryani's Touch skill is an attack which cannot be evaded. It has 100% physical damage conversion into lighting. It does have 600 damage effectiveness, which means it scales very well with all the flat area damage. But it also has 50% less attack speed. It also has 20% chance to shock enemy, and the gloves themselves also give another 10%. Also Wiki says that you can hit up to 50 enemies per skill use. Another thing to note, since you are unarmed you have 0% crit chance with the Doryani's Touch, unless you use the Rigwald's Curse Amulet. Also I think not many people know that you can actually use multi-strike. It was changed in 3.3, but I think not many people use it because it's just so slow and you would be locked in place for a very long time. So I didn't really want to make a build focusing on hit damage because that would require insane amount of attack speed for this to feel even decent. And instead I decided to go Ignite with the Stormfire ring, which allows my lightning damage to ignite. And this build went through quite a lot of changes, and in the end I had to sacrifice damage to get more life, to get more attack speed, to even go to the Unwavering stance and be immune to stuns completely. Which is a long travel since this is a Shadow Trickster, because Trickster gets a lot of attack speed and also does help scale ignite damage. And also obviously Patient Reaper is just amazing for any degen build. You recover life, ES and mana on kill. This build is also a bit starved on sockets. I couldn't fit in everything that I wanted, and some of the items could be improved. But then again I also have level 29 Wrath and level 28 Herald of Thunder, which do give a lot of flat lightning damage to attacks, which when get multiplied by that 600% damage effectiveness from the Doryani's Touch skill. And the build doesn't really have any defensive layers. I only have a shield charge with the Fortify, and I do occasionally blind enemies. Also use 2 defensive flasks, but I don't really have any other mitigation, which does make this build feel quite squishy in red tier maps, especially against Syndicate. But I did defeat the Shaper and Shaper's Guardians and tier 12 Elder, and the damage probably should be viable for Uber Elder, but I almost never push for Uber Elder. Shaper is my endgame, and once you get used to it, mapping is also pretty fast. Shield charging is relatively fast, at least in my eyes, and for mapping I don't even use all of the conditional things. I don't use Smite, I don't use Elemental Overload is rarely on, also don't need Scorching Ray, and I am using only Sulfur Flask for damage. Against the Shaper with all the buffs up and the Scorching Ray max stack, it only goes to 370,000 DPS with Ignites, which is totally fine for degen build. So could the build be improved? Yes. Should you play it? Well, it's up to you. This build is definitely not very cheap because you do need pretty expensive jewels, but you can definitely start it with very cheap because you don't even need 6-link body armor. And if you are not stubborn like me, you could use some other skill for clear speed and use Doryani's Touch only for bossing. In fact, my Smite setup, which has like no damage supports, can still do the clearing. So if you got like 3-link Smite, that would probably be enough. Or you could use some lighting skill for the clear speed for ignites like Arc. If you want to be boring, not gonna judge you. too much. So overall I think the build is quite alright. It's obviously not the best for the end game, but if you want some new skill that looks kind of badass, you can definitely give this a try. Or actually you could just make an armed crit build and not focus on ignites. In fact, I kind of wanted to refund this build and make like a non-ignite crit build, but I probably won't have enough time in this league to do that. So let me talk about my items, skills, passive skill tree, and my plans for end of the league. So starting with the gloves, I have Ignite Proliferation, Combustion, Deadly Ailments, and Elemental Damage with attacks. You kind of have to use Combustion in this setup, otherwise you would not have enough Ignite chance, and I have 99% chance to Ignite, and it still sometimes sucks when you just miss that Ignite and you have to attack it again to Ignite. With such low attack speed it does feel pretty bad, so you want to reach 100% chance to Ignite. Next I have Dyadian Dawn Belt, which basically gives me a 35% more Ignite damage, but it does make Ignites last shorter duration. Also keep in mind that Dyadian Dawn only works for attacks. Next I do have Corrupted Invictus Solaris shield. You could use the cold one instead. The corruption gives +2 to AoE and the shield itself gives +2 to suckered gems. So I am using level 21 Wrath and level 20 Herald of Thunder with level 3 Empower inside it, and that's how I get level 29 Wrath and level 28 Herald of Thunder. Obviously you can get level 4 Empower if you can afford that, but overall it would only give you around 10 to 15,000 ignite damage more. That's all, it's not really worth it. Then for the helmet I experimented quite a lot. Previously I just had a helmet with a lot of life and some resistances, and then I could afford to have more sockets, but I decided to try and use the Hale Negator, which is obviously a very strong helmet for most of the builds, but I'm so starved on sockets, I'm not entirely sure if it is worth using that, which also means you have to buy even more jewels. But with Hale Negator, when you take a savage hit, which is 15% of your life, you recover up to 3% of your life per spirit charge. So if you get 7 abyss jewels affecting you, you will recover 21% of your life. But it does take 7 seconds to get back those charges, because you lose those charges when you take a savage hit, which is rather frequently. Another option that would give you more damage is Crown of the Tyrant with the blue socket, which would lower nearby enemies' resistances by 10% and give you flat lightning damage to attacks and spells. However, it only has one socket. Another option would be a Delve crafted helmet with -9 to nearby enemy fire resistance and a big flat amount of life. Next, I got some 6-link body armor, nothing really fancy, just some random 6-link that I had. It does give decent amount of life and some resistances. You don't actually need 6-link, but I'm just using Shield Charge and Smite in the same setup, linked with faster attacks, Fortify, Ancestral Call and additional accuracy, because I have very low accuracy. And I obviously need accuracy to be able to hit with Shield Charge and with Smite to be able to gain Fortify and the Smite buff. Oh, by the way, in my helmet I have Spell Totem linked with Scorching Ray. Max Stack Scorching Ray usually gives about the same amount of damage as level 21 Smite would give. So in fact you could actually get rid of Scorching Ray and use Crown of the Tyrant, which would give basically the same amount of damage in the end, but you would not have another conditional thing, which is Scorching Ray Totem. Unfortunately, you would also have less life. Next, I got some decent boots with some dodge, which is not really required, but it does also give a lot of movement speed, resistances and some life. If I didn't hate running labs so much, I would probably replace this boots enchantments and try to get lightning damage if you haven't killed recently, I think, something like that. But then it would only basically be useful against the Shaper, and maybe Elder during the first phase. By the way, you may want to double corrupt Doryani's fist if you're actually pushing this build to the max, and try to get maybe attack speed, percentage life, or if you're lucky, elemental weakness on hit. By the way, in my boots I have Storm Brand linked with increased critical strike chance, curse on hit and flammability. By the way, I'm very surprised how difficult it is to trigger elemental overload with this build. My Stormbrand currently has 16.7 critical strike chance, and trust me, against a single target it's gonna be annoying, since it does snapshot your ignite damage, so you want to get all the buffs before you ignite. There's like 1% chance that I'm wrong about ignites being snapshotted. And lastly, my rings and amulet. Well, one of the ring is Stormfire, another ring I tried to craft something but didn't really get anything special. I just wanted more life. I have pretty good opal ring, but I just really wanted more life. And in fact I needed more lightning resistance. And for the amulet, again nothing too special, lightning damage to attacks and elemental damage with attacks and then life. Now for the passive skill tree. So this is Trickster. First I got Patient Reaper, then Prolonged Pain for ignite damage, then I got Weave the Arcane, and finally from Uberlab Swift Killer. The rest of the passive skill tree getting life, elemental damage, traveling to the witch area, getting AoE, going up to the ignite nodes, more to the left getting elemental overload, then going more to the Templar area, getting more life, getting a bit more AoE if you feel like, getting more to the fire ignite nodes, taking the holy fire, and going down to the Scion, getting life, and traveling even more down all the way to Unwavering Stance. Because there's nothing worse than being stunned in the middle of your attack animation and being forced to attack again to ignite, especially if it takes 1 second to attack. That 1 second can be life and death. Also, don't forget elemental equilibrium once you start using Stormfire, and make sure you have no flat fire damage to attacks and spells. If I wouldn't have to travel to Unwavering Stance, I could get more damage by going more to the left from the Templar area, but even with the Soul of the Brand King Pantheon power, it's still not reliable enough. So I would still recommend taking Unwavering Stance. Sadly cannot squeeze in Calm's Roots because don't have enough sockets. Oh, for the Abyss Jewels you want lightning damage to attacks, then flat life, attack speed if possible. Onslaught on kill can also be pretty decent for mapping, or increase damage over time while holding a shield, but you definitely want at least couple of jewels with attack speed. And that covers this build. Now my plans for the rest of the league: I want to do one more build with traps, with the cooldown traps, and then I'll wait for the big announcement about the next league, about the changes, rework skills, rework the items, and then either refund 1 or 2 of my previous builds into something else just to mess around with, or start a new challenge. A challenge to use Veil of the Night helmet and to see how far can I go with that helmet. If you don't know, that helmet makes your elemental resistance 0. It cannot be higher, it cannot be lower. And having 0 elemental resistance is obviously very scary. So I want to see if I can come up with some sort of plan to kind of work around that, but mostly just as a challenge to see how far can I go with that. So my next video may take a while unless I decide to finally finish that Righteous Fire build, which is probably a bit unlikely. But that's gonna be it for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.